Jimmy Dore, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. Great to be back.
Yeah, I sincerely appreciate you being back on. And I don't know if you heard, but I recently interviewed Noam Chomsky, and I know that you did review that with Max Blumenthal, and a clip of that interview went viral. So I appreciate you being on the show today, and I just want to invite any other major influencer who featured a clip of that to be on the show. Kyle Kalinske, Tim Pool, anyone who featured clips from that interview is welcome on the show. But Jimmy, thank you so much for being back. It's always an honor to speak with you. And yeah, I guess that's my first question, because I saw you did review that interview I did with Chomsky. What were your thoughts?
My thoughts was that he's lost his mind. Just the stuff he was saying to you was just like, where you're getting your analogies from? TikTok videos? It just didn't say he's wrong on the science, and he's just operating out of fear. It's like what I said in my video was that people don't realize that all the experts agree now that everyone's going to get COVID. You're just like what Dr. Robert Malone said on my show months ago, and nobody else picked it up or has the courage to repeat it. He said, you cannot vaccinate your way out of an outbreak in a pandemic like this with a leaky vaccine. And this vaccine is very leaky. And that's a medical term. And what does that mean? Leaky vaccine. It means that once you get vaccinated, you can still transmit the virus and you can still be infected with the virus. And that's very leaky, right? All vaccines are leaky, like other ones are 97%. This is super leaky, and it doesn't give you almost no protection from Delta after a couple of months. So what Chomsky's saying is that he's afraid of only the unvaccinated, when we all know science proves that, like you told him, that the vaccinated people can infect you just as well as an unvaccinated person. And he said, oh, sorry, it's almost, he's wrong on that. There's just, and I showed it on my show. I showed the most recent studies show that he's just wrong about that the vaccines don't protect against Delta transmission. And that's just a fact. And in fact, the highest vaccinated, I also got reported on this on my show, a Harvard study showed that the countries and counties with the highest vaccination rates also had very high transmission rates. Now, that's not saying that vaccines don't protect you from serious illness. What it says is that you need to take other steps if you want to prevent transmission, that vaccines aren't doing it. So and Chomsky seems ignorant of all that science and knowledge. And also, children don't need to be vaccinated. That's crazy. They're not doing it in the UK. They're recommending in many European countries just for kids who have cancer and asthma and things like that. And the reason why there's no long-term studies, they have a bigger chance of dying from the influenza, children do, than from COVID. And so there's no reason to do that. And they're like, well, they could transmit it. Well, we all know now that people who are vaccinated can also transmit it. And to give somebody a medical procedure so they can help someone else, even though there's risk to them, but they don't know what the risks are. So this is, so that's what I was saying. And it seems like Chomsky seems to be ignorant of all this science. And where is he getting his information from? Don Lemon? He was using that stupid traffic light thing. No, he goes, it's just like, well, if you don't want to get vaccinated, that's just like you don't want to obey traffic lights. No, I don't want a traffic light jammed into my veins. That's a big difference. You don't get heart inflammation sitting at fucking traffic. This is the dumbest. I can't believe. Weren't you flummoxed?
Yeah, it was an interesting interview. I try to be as respectful as possible. I do have a lot of respect for Noam Chomsky, and I really appreciate the fact that he's done interviews on this show several times. Again, he was really one of the first celebrities to be on the show, so I appreciated that. But I've always, as I've interviewed Noam Chomsky over the years, I've come to realize that I think that there's been a misconception about how radical or how off script he may tend to go. I think that a lot of what he said, would be accepted on the fringes of the Democratic Party.
Oh,
and I think that vaccine hesitancy or being critical of vaccines or vaccine passports, that's clearly just outside of the norm of what is acceptable within the Democratic Party. So I think that's what that revealed.
Don't you think it's sad that there is no critique of the establishment COVID policy from the left? And if you do it, they call you anti-vaxxers. Isn't that nuts?
Yeah, and this is something I actually brought up in some interviews recently with Max Blumenthal, and I also discussed it with Aaron Mate a little bit. Is my concern is that the anti-imperialist left, the folks who have been skeptical of Russiagate, and the folks who were skeptical of the January 6th hysteria, that there seems to be a division there, where some folks are accommodating the vaccination and vaccine passport propaganda.
Yeah, it's really sad. It's just regular skepticism is just thrown out the window, and people are just repeating propaganda 100%. Like again, where are you getting your information from? CNN? I keep asking people, where are you getting this information from? And nobody trusted the FDA when Trump was president, and now we're all supposed to trust everybody in government, even though the person in charge of the vaccine department at the FDA resigned over the boosters and what Joe Biden's administration was doing to push them without the science behind them. And by the way, as Dr. Robert Malone recommended on my show, the way you treat a pandemic like this is that you vaccinate the vulnerable. You vaccinate the people who are elderly, and people who have comorbidities, and people who are in high-risk professions. And then you let it circulate, and then it becomes more contagious but less deadly. And he said if you over-vaccinate everyone, you're never going to, first of all, it doesn't stop the transmission because it's a super leaky vaccine. And that actually creates more mutations that are deadlier. And so that's what the guy who invented no matter what the Atlantic says, that's edited by a war criminal, no matter what the Atlantic says, Dr. Robert Malone was the first person to do whatever that thing is you do to do mRNA technology vaccines. Everyone agrees he was the first one who did it, and he did it at, I think, the Salk Institute. So, that's what he said. And he said, this is accepted science. Everybody knows this. But again, they're turning a lot of accepted science on its head. Just like last year, I've showed on my shows, I can show you Fauci on video saying you can't mandate people to get a vaccine, and if they don't want one, that's their choice. Nancy Pelosi saying it's a matter of medical privacy. You can't make people take it back. Joe Biden saying you can't. I showed people, all of a sudden, a year later, people have no idea they said those things. And why did they flip? All of a sudden in a year, that's a principle. That's not the science changed. No, that's a principle, a mandating of vaccination. That's a principle, and principles aren't supposed to change. And as John Stewart pointed out years ago, if you don't follow your principles when things are tough, they're not principles, they're just hobbies.
Yeah, that's what I find the most concerning is the mandates and the prospects of vaccination passports. And I think what people really found most troublesome about Chomsky's interview is not anything he said specifically about vaccines, but the way that we treat the unvaccinated, and the fact that they're going to be essentially a caste of society, or essentially the way he put it is providing food to them like you would provide to prisoners. I think people find that troubling, that you're going to separate society. And I mean, and it goes to extremes where people are talking about prosecuting folks who are promoting vaccine skepticism. Things are really kind of going off the rails into a really Orwellian dark place pretty quickly.
And they just call anybody who disagrees with them as anti-vax. Anybody who disagrees or has a critique of how to handle a pandemic, who has a different that varies from the establishment narrative, which, by the way, comes directly from big pharma and the establishment media. Anybody who varies from that, they immediately label as anti-vax. It's like, and because they think the people who have critiques of it are Trumpers.
Right.
And they don't realize that 72% of the unvaccinated of young black people in Manhattan are unvaccinated, are black. So that when they're saying we should starve them and separate them from society and create a two-tiered society, and not, Keith Olbermann was tweeting out, fire them all. You know who he was saying fire to? He was saying fire all the paramedics, the police, and the firemen who were marching, using their freedom of speech, First Amendment rights to march against a mandate of a vaccine, of a medical procedure. Those are the people to fire them all. So as soon as you disagree with them politically, you're just throwing your garbage. Throw them in the street, and we don't care what happens to them. Take away their means of supporting themselves. So what they also know now, because I pointed it out, and Keith Olbermann knows this, that 72% of the young Black people in Manhattan are unvaccinated. So he wants to throw them too in the dustbin of society. He wants to make them cultural rejects. Who? Young Black and brown people in Manhattan. That's what's, and Keith Olbermann knows it now and doesn't care. That's the kind of monster Keith Olbermann is, and people like that. And I pointed out a long time ago that people who hated Trump the loudest are just like him. They're every bad thing they said about Trump, they are. Cenk Uygur, Keith Olbermann, anybody who has Trump derangement syndrome has Trump living in their shadow, and this is proving it. Look what Keith Olbermann wants to do to medical workers, firemen, cops who he used to worship, and now he wants to throw, and young Black people. He doesn't care who gets caught up in it. And it's nuts.
Right. Yeah. And again, I think that's just the most troubling part of it, is the dehumanization of people who either don't want to get vaccinated, or who are skeptical, or who have questions after the fact, or, you know, maybe don't want to get boosters. I think maybe that's the next stage, is anyone who's booster hesitant is going to be in this, you know, outcast segment of society.
So I had a conversation just last week with someone who's very close to me, who was having a hard time with my stance on mandates and things. And I said to them, I said, you know, you and I both got vaccinated over 6 months ago now. So our vaccine is pretty much worn off. Certainly, we're not, the part that's supposed to protect you from getting it is gone, because that wanes after 3 months. So now we're effectively unvaccinated, and the FDA is not recommending healthy people our age get vaccinated, get the booster. So now we're technically unvaccinated, right? And you know what they say to that? Nothing. They have nothing to say to that. Bill Maher said he won't get the booster. So now is Bill Maher, should he be isolated from society? Should he be starved to death? I mean, what should he have to walk around with the scarlet letter because he's unclean? Bill, anyway, so this is the crazy. And this is 100% fear. Chomsky is convinced he's going, if he gets the virus, he's going to die. He might. He's 94 years old, or however old he is. And you can tell he hasn't been to a barber since COVID started. And I'm not saying that as a joke. I'm saying that I know what that's like, because I was the same thing. I was afraid to see a barber. I didn't see I didn't get my hair cut for a year until I got vaccinated. And so I know what he's going through. But he also isn't informed on the science. He's not a virologist. I talked to virologists. He's not quoting science. He's quoting TikTok videos.
Well, again, you know, Chomsky's very well read, but I think that he draws a lot from the corporate media. So if the corporate media is all, you know, pushing the same kind of talking points, then I think that's what he's digesting. And honestly, this actually goes into a whole nother thing too. I don't know if you saw, but Anna Kasparian had an issue with one of the questions that I asked Chomsky, and that was about TYT and about independent media. What I'm trying to get at here is, do you think it's concerning that there are self-proclaimed progressive media outlets who have adopted this sort of neo-McCarthyism, who have, you know, adopted imperialist talking points against Russia, against Syria, against China? Do you find that concerning, that folks who think that they're on the left are being fed these imperialist talking points?
Tell me exactly what you're talking about. What charge are you claiming is taking up the imperialist line?
Well, specifically, when you have Aaron Mate, who reported on the OPCW whistleblower report, who's reported on what's been happening on the ground in Syria, who won an award for debunking Russiagate and showing how Russiagate was a complete fraud. When you have progressive media outlets trying to slander him and smear him, saying that he is being paid for by the Russians.
Well, what slander do you have in mind?
Saying that he's being paid for by the Russians because of the fact that
If anybody says that, of course, I would condemn it. I also thought that Russiagate was a total fraud and said so openly. I get slandered all the time. You want a list? I'll send you my mail sometime.
Her whole take on that is that I was asking Noam Chomsky about Twitter drama. But the issue that I was trying to get at here was the capture of independent media, of the fact that Jeffrey Katzenberg gave $20 million to the Young Turks, the fact that The Intercept is owned by a billionaire, that Democracy Now! Receives Ford Foundation money, and that this big money is influencing independent media, which I thought, the guy that wrote Manufacturing Consent, it would be good to kind of ask him about these things. But, he was unfamiliar with some of this, it seemed like. I guess he's not, a TYT member, doesn't really follow them. So, I mean, that's what I was getting at. And she was critical. I don't know if you saw the whole interview, but I don't know. Did you kind of get to?
I saw a lot of the interview, but I didn't see all of it. I missed that part.
Yeah. Well, again, he wasn't really following the line of questioning. So it came off a bit awkwardly because I had to repeat it several times. He thought at one point that I was accusing Amy Goodman of receiving Russian money. That was the opposite of what I was trying to say. But
I saw the parts I saw, he seemed lost on a lot of stuff. He seemed to struggle with basic questions. Like just your question about, tell me about a movie you liked. Like you had to ask that question 3 times before you could get an answer from him.
Yeah. Well, I think that the trouble with the independent media question is that he just wasn't familiar about this. He didn't know that Jeffrey Katzenberg had given $20 million to the Young Turks. But again, I think that this is important. And, I wish that Noam Chomsky was kind of aware of these facts, because I'd love to have the insight of the guy who wrote Manufacturing Consent on the capture of progressive media. And, we could have gone a little more in depth. Again, it was a little hard to kind of have that part of the conversation. I wish that we could have gotten to the fact that Anna Kasparian, while Jeffrey Katzenberg was lobbying the Los Angeles City Council to pass anti-camping laws, that she randomly one day in June started ranting against the homeless.
I do think that there are progressives, I don't know if it's progressive policy, but progressives in places like California who have made terrible decisions. And so one of those terrible decisions is essentially doing away with anti-camping laws, right? Allowing people to camp out wherever they want, whenever they want. And if, we have a homeless problem in California, we have it all throughout the country, but it's particularly bad in California. And so the argument is, well, if there isn't public housing available for people, they should be allowed to camp out. Okay, but there's also a problem right now where there is public housing available and individuals will say, no, I don't want to take it. I don't want to follow the rules in the public housing. And so as a result, I would rather camp out. Progressive lawmakers are like, we should allow them to camp out. And you know what happens? Crime happens. Open air drug markets happen, and it's the truth. These are the facts of the matter. In fact, it was addressed in this Daily Beast article, and honestly, it was cathartic to read it because everyone denies that this is happening.
And I think that's something that should be focused on by the left, is the capture of independent media, of the fact that imperialism and things like anti-homeless ordinances are being kind of pushed on the left.
That was a remarkable video to see Anna Kasparian sound like just a despicable human being, like just an out of touch oligarch. She sounded like, she was calling homeless people criminals, and she was angry, and she had vitriol for them and anger for the homeless people in Los Angeles and how we got to start treating them more like criminals. At the same time, Jeffrey Katzenberg was lobbying the LA City Council to do just that, criminalize homelessness. And and then of course she caught hell for it on social media, so she had to walk it back. Like they walk back everything, and they pretend like they never said it. Just like they didn't. Just like Cenk is now pretending he didn't say Julian Assange can't be trusted, and that he repeated CIA talking points that were lies about Julian Assange on his own show, saying that Julian Assange had met with Manafort. No, those were straight up lies. I debunked them in real time. He repeated them uncritically, and then went on to say you can't trust Julian Assange because he's working for Trump. He's picked a side. That's what Cenk Uygur said about Julian Assange, and now he's trying to whitewash that. He did it today on Twitter.
Yeah, and it's so prevalent. It's not just the Young Turks. I mean, I think that they're the most prominent example and the one that we could speak to the most. And just so you know, too, I've extended an offer to Cenk to donate $5,000 to any charity of his choice if he'd like to come on this show. and just debunk all of these claims that are being made about the influence of Jeffrey Katzenberg's money. You know, if it is completely false, then he's welcome to sit down and discuss it. He should be able to debunk it pretty easily. But again, the larger point that I was trying to make to Chomsky, you know, is it's not the Twitter drama of TYT, you know, who received Katzenberg money, slandering and smearing an award-winning journalist as being a Russian agent or an Assadist. It's not just that. It's the fact that The Intercept, Democracy Now!, Sam Cedar, all of these breadtube influencers, they're all pushing imperialist talking points and attacking the anti-imperialist left, which is, you know, I think that this is the most important thing for the left to be kind of discussing right now, is what this crossroads really means.
Well, you saw Cenk Uygur, I don't know if you saw, but Cenk Uygur went on Rising, slandered me, said I lied when I said that Cenk Uygur was for bombing Syria. He said, I never advocated bombing Syria. And then, of course, I said, well, there is this video of you arguing for bombing Syria for 10 straight minutes to my face. There's that, you fucking liar.
Look, I'm going to take you guys on that, okay? Because, so we can't bomb Russia if Russia uses chemical weapons because we don't want to start World War III. You're right, absolutely, right? Okay, but why don't we take the low-lying fruit? Okay, like send a message wherever we practically can. So North Korea, I'd love to decapitate all the leaders in North Korea and set that country free. But we might lose Seoul, South Korea, and millions of people. We can't do it, right? And if we can do it in Syria and help some people, well, okay, that's a good place to start.
Well, the reason why you can't selectively enforce the law is because it breeds disrespect and contempt for the law. So if you're trying to uphold international law selectively, you're doing the exact opposite. You're undermining international law because we illegally invaded Iraq, and a million people were killed, displaced other millions, countless. How many thousands of innocent people were killed in that? That was an illegal war. We lied about it. If nobody kept us in check, somehow we have to still keep other people in check. I said it yesterday, you can't have Tony Soprano giving out parking tickets. It doesn't fucking work.
Yeah, he's completely captured, right? And why would he smear Julian Assange and now say he didn't? So he had to do that for a donor. He had to signal a donor or someone inside the Democratic Party. And we all saw him lie about forced to vote when he said McCarthy could become speaker. People still repeat that on Twitter to me on a daily basis, that McCarthy could have became speaker because of forced to vote. That was a lie that he propagated, that he pushed. That's a straight up lie. And also David Sirota argued that point on my show and then walked it back. So that was the talking point for people who wanted to have access to the squad. They had to say McCarthy could become speaker. That scared the hell out of people, and that wasn't true. So why would Cenk Uygur lie? That's not a mistake. That's not Cenk Uygur getting something wrong. That's a conscious lie, just like when CNN lied about Joe Rogan. Why are you doing that? Why are you committing a conscious lie? What does he get out of that? Just like when he lied about Julian Assange meeting with Manafort. We knew that was a lie. Everybody at the Aggressive Progressives knew that was a fucking joke. It got repeated nowhere. No one even picked that up except the young fucking Turks. And they, by the way, they haven't retracted that. So you tell me why they haven't retracted that.
Right. But again, I think that the larger issue is the fact that, you know, voices like yours are kind of getting pushed out of these institutions. So, you know, like I believe you were made to not feel welcome at the Young Turks after a while.
Of course, they turned their back on us. We would walk in to into the newsroom. They turn their back on us because we were debunking their fucking bullshit in real time. In real time, we were making them look like the clowns that they are. And how could you not have resentment for that? And they are fucking clowns. And they never apologized for 4 straight years of fucking McCarthyism and red baiting everybody, and including the president of the United States and anybody who had a different narrative than him. And now he says we're right wingers after he takes $24 million from Jeffrey Katzenberg. And the thing I love about Ryan Grimm on Rising is that he doesn't take a check from one billionaire. He takes a check from 3 different billionaires. So these are the people who ran interference on forced to vote. Ryan Grimm, the DC bureau inter-chief for The Intercept, gets paid by Pierre Omidyar. He gets paid by the billionaire who owns The Hill, a right-wing billionaire who owns and he gets paid by Jeffrey Katzenberg, another billionaire who owns the Young Turks. And that guy is out there somehow. He's the progressive voice of journalism. Every time something progressive comes up, Ryan Grimm seems to fucking kneecap it, just like forced to vote, just like the Medicare for all, just like the Medicare for All march in 50 cities. He shit on it. And none of those people showed up to even cover it. The Young Turks didn't even fucking cover it. So you want to know what the corporate capture of indie media means? That's what it means. If your show appears on a Comcast platform, you're not independent fucking media.
Right. Yeah, and again, like anyone who kind of is anti-establishment at these different outlets seems to be getting pushed out. So again, you were pushed out, as were other folks at the Young Turks. Glenn Greenwald was pushed out from The Intercept. Matt Taibbi was seemingly pushed out from Rolling Stone. And it just seems as though they want to isolate folks like you more and more and kind of get them outside of independent media.
Well, that's exactly of course, that's what it is. And of course, they have the demonization. They do the smear articles, and they've all done them. And my favorite thing was when that douchebag Nathan Robinson retweeted, said he tweeted out that Jimmy Dore is he seems to only attack lefties, and this guy doesn't know any. He doesn't have any solidarity. And then the next day, he fired everybody for trying to unionize at his fucking magazine. So I don't know how that douchebag's ever going to make it back, but he will. Glenn Greenwald, for some reason, has a fucking soft spot for him. But
so I don't know if you saw the other part of my interview with Chomsky, where we talked about COVID austerity and student loan debt specifically. And this was another interesting thing. I was actually amazed by this part, I think, more than anything, the fact that Chomsky was saying that Joe Biden could not forgive student loan debt through executive action, or that would be.
He's just wrong about that. He's just 100% wrong on the facts.
Well, he was also saying that it would be a poor strategic decision because it would embolden the right, and it would be, he said, it would be electoral suicide, which I completely disagree with. I think that the current course is electoral suicide. Some debate over whether or not Joe Biden could write off student loan debt. Do you have any thoughts on why he wouldn't do that?
He could. You're saying he might say by executive order.
Yes.
Rule Congress. Yes, he could. And
but if the president has the power to pause student loan payments, doesn't that suggest that he has the power to get rid of them?
He could try an executive order to overrule the right wing, the far right efforts to harm the population and benefit the very rich. He could try that. It would immediately start a series of lawsuits by major corporations, tie up the courts for 15 years. They have enormous resources. It would mean more fossil fuel and corporate funding for the right-wing Democrats and Republicans. They would give them more incentive and they'd be able to get public opinion to back them through the kinds of things you're saying, to try to stymie the rest of the program. So he could do that, but it would be political suicide. I
don't see how on February 1st, you're going to have 45 million people who were not making student loan payments for 2 years start making payments again, effectively start making another mortgage payment. That's just going to crash the economy. And it seems bizarre to me. I don't know like what the Democrats' calculus is. It almost seems as though they're trying to throw the next election.
No, it just seems like they're controlled by the same people, and the same people don't care who wins the next election. Mm-hmm. So, it's the point that I think someone else made the point, and I repeat it, that or maybe it's Chris Hedges, that in every election of my lifetime, who's won every presidential election in my lifetime? Goldman Sachs. They don't, no matter. Barack Obama took more money from Wall Street than John McCain did. And of course, he got his cabinet directly from an email, which WikiLeaks exposed, came right from Citigroup. So the idea that you're going to get something different, I mean, it's now down to a $1.7 trillion bill. There's nothing in the bill. They gave $5 trillion to the richest motherfuckers in the country while they made you stay home and gave you nothing. They wouldn't even give you a $2,000 check the sons of bitches promised you, as if it's coming out of their own pocket. We live in a rapacious oligarchy, and you think voting for Democrat, so that all AOC is there to do, just like the Young Turks, just like Brian Grimm, is to get you to vote Democrat. And it does so just like Shama Sawant says, the road for progressives inside the Democratic Party leads to a graveyard. And yet they found a big enough monster to scare people. They found Donald Trump, who they could paint as a big enough monster. He was not a bigger monster than Barack Obama and Joe Biden. Joe Biden and Barack Obama have caused way more damage to people of color in this country than fucking Donald Trump did. That's for sure. They certainly deported more Hispanics and put more of them in cages. Right now, it's almost doubled, and nobody gives a shit about it anymore because nobody really gives a shit about those people. They just pretended virtue signaled to give a shit about immigrants because they could use it as a weapon to bash Donald Trump and make him look like a racist. Well, guess who else is a racist? Joe Biden is a racist, 100%, and he's the architect of the current prison system, corporate for-profit prison system that imprisons Black and brown people at unbelievably higher rates than their population. So that's the guy. And now you elected him as an antidote to Donald Trump because he tweets mean things. And it worked perfectly. You know that the people at Goldman Sachs, the people at Silicon Valley, the people at Raytheon were thrilled to what they know. Heads they win, tails they win. If they don't lose. And so, and I tell people until, as Lawrence O'Donnell said in that Ralph Nader documentary, before he had his job at MSNBC, Lawrence O'Donnell told everybody, until you are willing to withhold your vote from the Democratic Party, they will not listen to you. You will never be able to pull them to the left until you show them you're willing to not vote for them. And that's what I'm telling people. And that's why I'm a threat to the Democratic Party.
That's what all of these different progressive outlets have in common, is that they're all, at the end of the day, telling you to vote for Democrats. TYT, The Intercept, Democracy Now! At the end of the day, they're telling you Democrats are better than Republicans. And that's what Noam Chomsky actually said in the interview as well, is that, at the end of the day, there's simple arithmetic and you have to choose one or the other, which just has proven to not be effective. There has not been a case where things have gotten better year after year. I mean, my political memory isn't that long, about 20 years or so, but every 4 years, it's you have to vote for the Democrats to keep the Republicans at office. And when the Democrats do get in there, things continue to get worse. Things never actually get better. And we're seeing that right now. And this country is just going to shit right now, but they're going to continue to say, well, you can't vote for Republicans next November, no matter how bad things get.
I mean, Chomsky, let me just say this about Chomsky. Like, Chomsky was good. He's good at outlining the problem. He is shit on solutions. His idea in Syria was that we should stay there and keep occupying their oil fields.
No, he said that on this show. He said to protect the Kurds. His reasoning was against Turkey specifically, but yes, he said that U.S. forces should be protecting the Kurds.
And that is fucking nuts. What's going to save the Kurds is they have to make an alignment with the government, with the Assad government. They have to make it. That's who they need protection from. With anyway, he's just fucking right. So he just repeats right-wing talking points all the time now. I mean, he's out of his fucking mind. I don't. All the respect in the world. Who gives a shit? I'm a fucking comedian. My whole thing is about disrespecting everybody. I'm the fucking court jester. I get to make fun of the king, and I'm the court jester. I get to make fun of fucking Chomsky. I get to make fun of everybody.
Well, what I appreciated in your conversation with Max Blumenthal was the fact that Max brought up Michael Parenti's criticisms of Noam Chomsky. And I think that Michael Parenti is a figure who, may be somewhat forgotten on the left, unfortunately, but he really was the most outspoken anti-imperialist and a critic of Chomsky, left of Chomsky. And actually had the honor to speak with Michael Parenti this summer. After speaking with him and after speaking with a friend of his and some family, I don't think it would really be appropriate at this point for him to do any interviews.
Yeah, that's what happened. That's what I heard. That's what. Okay.
But I think a lot of folks should read some Michael Parenti, should familiarize themselves with him, with some of his criticisms of Noam Chomsky. I think that these are important things to look back on. So it was great to see Max bring that up. But just on the subject of electoral politics, again, I actually do agree with Noam Chomsky. I don't think that electoral politics are completely the solution. I think that we need general strikes. I think that we need a student loan debt strike coming up in February. But insofar as people need to vote, I think that we should be thinking outside of the box. Obviously, I have criticisms of the Green Party. I think that they are controlled opposition to some degree. At least they're willing to rig their nomination. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with the People's Party. I'm hoping that they run some candidates next year and that maybe they'll have a presidential candidate in 2024. I know that you spoke at one of their events. Have you heard anything about the People's Party and 2020 election?
So I was just in Florida doing comedy in West Palm Beach and Dania Beach. And I found out that the People's Party actually is on the ballot in Florida.
Really?
So that's their first state. They're on the ballot in Florida. So I think that's their first state. That's a big deal. So that's fun. It was exciting. I was like, oh my God, that's great. That's great. I was just excited. Anything like that is exciting to me. So, you know, I was on the advisory council when it first started. And then, you know, we quickly realized that they're going to use me to discredit the People's Party. So, so Nick Brana, and he's got a lot of great people working for him. And so, I mean, I you know, it's an unbelievably big lift to try to start. I mean, it's much easier to do, say, for instance, what the Justice Democrats did, because they're running inside a primary, inside of already an established party with ballot access and all that shit. They don't have to do anything. So this is a much heavier lift. And if it could be pulled off, it would have a much greater impact. You can't have less impact than the fucking squad have had.
Right.
And, but, you know, I mean, it's just like, you know, will it succeed? I think it can have successes. And I mean, look how fast other parties have built, you know, in other countries, right? In Mexico and Greece. So, you know, fingers crossed. What the hell else are you going to do? You're going to keep voting for fucking Democrats? And then you got the goddamn Greens. They go and screw their own fucking primary, right? They rig it so that they have a guy who's destined to lose and not get any fucking media or votes. It was as if the establishment rigged that primary.
Yeah, they followed the DNC playbook, essentially. They did everything that they could to rig that in favor of Howie Hawkins. And every single other Green Party candidate who ran in 2020 will tell you the same exact thing. But you know, they're all, every other one is a conspiracy theorist, apparently, because they recognize there was a conspiracy. But yeah, I mean, you know, I'm optimistic about the People's Party. Again, I don't see any other option. And you know, it was nice to see that there was many names associated with some of the events that they put on the past. I believe Jesse Ventura was, Marianne Williamson was. I know there was some other folks as well.
So there was Cornel West, Marianne Williamson, Medea Benjamin. I know I'm leaving out people, but yeah, there was a lot of people involved.
Yeah, so I mean, I think if you get those folks together, you know, the Susan Sarandons and whatnot, the Oliver Stones, I think if you get those influencers together with a lot of grassroots activists, you know, I think you have a shot at a real political party.
I hope so. I really do. And it's just amazing to see the people immediately start infiltrating to discredit it. That's playbook 101.
I think didn't Emma Vigeland, somebody, I believe it was Emma Vigeland, blamed the People's Party for Nina Turner's loss in Ohio.
They called me dumb. Isn't that funny? They called me dumb. Too bad I beat him to the punch, but Jesus Christ, are they? They're such what Nick Cruz says. They're such unserious people. Nina Turner spoke at the People's Party's fucking convention. The People's Party was the first people to tweet out support for her. They're just, you know, and they're the same people. She's on Comcast platform, literally a Comcast platform, trying to look down their nose at Substack.
Right.
That's, you know, that's like CNN shitting on YouTube. It's the same thing. It's like, what do you do? It's this. So I'm blessed with fucking shithead enemies. I really am.
Well, one other thing that I wanted to ask you on the subject is Andrew Yang forming this Forward Party, or at least supposedly forming it. I kind of thought maybe it was a marketing ploy for his book, but you know, regardless, I think at the end of the day, he's going to endorse the Democrats. That's at least my theory. I think that my conspiracy theory on this is that it's trying to eat up the oxygen about a third party.
That's exactly right.
And divert people to vote for Democrats last minute to keep Trump out of the White House.
That's 100% right. That's exactly what this is. I'm sure it's funded by some billionaire. Is Yang a billionaire? I don't know, but I'm sure it's funded by some billionaire who.
Well, he supports the prosecution of Julian Assange, and he's anti-BDS. So I don't see how supporting, you know, a third party that supports what the Democrats and Republicans support, how that means anything.
It doesn't. It's just exactly what you're saying. He's there to just pick up all the energy, the revolutionary energy that people have to discuss with the two-party system, and again funnel it right back into the system.
Right. I mean, it's the same. We've seen this again and again, right? Like, I remember at the anti-war protests in the mid 2000s, Democrats started showing up and they started being anti-war, and then you had Obama, and then it's right back into the establishment. You know, the Occupy Wall Street movement became the Bernie Sanders movement, and that's right back into the establishment. Like, it's the same thing over and over again. You have to get a hold of that grassroots movement and then pull them back in line.
And that's exactly what they did. And then as soon as Barack Obama got elected, he disbanded those groups, those grassroots movements that had sprouted up to support him. He just turned his back on them. And, you know, he gave another speech the other day. And if you didn't know what was going on, you could see how people get sucked in. You can see he makes you feel positive after he's done talking. You feel like, oh, I can accomplish something. And then, of course, he doesn't. He's just there to, again, funnel that energy back into a pro-war, pro-corporate party.
I do have to say, though, I think that Barack Obama's presidency did turn a lot of people off to politics. At least that's my personal experience, because, you know, I kind of fell for the Obama grift to some degree. And then just watching what happened over the course of his presidency and seeing him, I remember like one of the first things, there was like an anti-WTO protest in like Pittsburgh or something, and he was speaking against the protesters and talking about how he supported capitalism. But just from there, you know, keeping the troops overseas, murdering American citizens, among others, with drones. You know, everything that happened in Libya and Syria, like that was just really disillusioning. I think that, you know, at least that woke me up to what's actually happening in politics. And I imagine a lot of other millennials must have had the same effect.
I think so. I don't know how you could watch. Even Michael Moore told the truth about Barack Obama in Flint, Michigan. I mean, those people in Flint, Michigan were aghast at him. And so, I mean, I don't know how you can. I mean, I guess he's a pretty speaker, and he has worse enemies, right? So Trump looks like a worse guy than him, even though Barack Obama dropped way more bombs than he did. You know, Barack Obama dropped more bombs than George Bush and Dick Cheney.
Yep. Again, I mean, he expanded the drone program. He expanded unconstitutional spying. So again, things just got worse under the Democrats, which is exactly what's happening again right now. Well, Jimmy, if you have some time left, I do have several patron questions for you.
Okay, here we go. This is when you really like to stick it to me.
So John McCarthy from Chicago asked, Jimmy, are you ever going to interview Caleb Maupin on your show? Primo interviewed him and he said a ton of good things about you. His group has been doing great work around the fight to free Alex Saab.
Let me tell you about this fucking communist Caleb Maupin. This motherfucker is trying to undermine our society with his communism. No, I like Caleb. I'll have him on. No, I want to read his book. I'll have him on. I like him.
So next question. What does Jimmy think of China rising and a multipolar world? So big question there for you.
I'm not smart enough to answer that. I don't know enough about China. I'll have to, I'll have Danny Haifong on and my show, and I'll get one perspective, and then I'll have Dylan Radigan on, I'll get another perspective, and then I'll have Kurt Metzger on, who's actually been to China. I get a whole nother. So I do know that the CIA and the establishment capitalists are starting a Cold War with China, and they're pushing a lot of propaganda. I know that Uyghur shit was mostly propaganda. So I know that much. I know people are suspect of their Belt and Roads Initiative. Is that what that is? So people are calling that imperialism, that they're just not killing people. And I'm like, well, that's much better for them. if that is, isn't that, I mean, can we ease into that kind of, oh, they're coming in and they're building up our roads and bridges and shit. They're like, you can't really, it's hard to get upset at that, right? Isn't it?
It is funny how all of the vitriol against Russia has kind of faded since Biden came into office. And now we are becoming, the Biden administration is being very anti-China, as Trump's administration was.
They're doing their pivot, right? Isn't that the pivot to China or whatever? So I don't know. They're going to actually do war. I don't know what they're going to do, but it's not good.
So next patron question. As Wikipedia is increasingly considered an authoritative source, have you considered taking legal action against them for their libelous information about you? In
Yes.
addition to correcting the article, it could force the site to change its stance on indie journalism like Gray Zone.
You'd think someone before me would have done it if it was possible, right? I know a lot of lawyers, nobody's ever offered to do it for me. And I'm sure it would, you know, I think they're somehow they must be insulated from lawsuits, because otherwise they would have been sued. I think they have to be, because it's open source or shit, or whatever the fuck it is. I'm sure there's a clause somewhere, and you know, it's people are going, you sound like a crazy person if you say this, but the intelligence community is what runs Wikipedia, or has, for people like me. I mean, the Gray Zone, they're not even allowed to be used as a source on Wikipedia. So who decided that? So obviously Wikipedia is in the pocket of the intelligence community. So, and that's why all those lies about me are being able to be kept up on Wikipedia. I mean, if you went to Wikipedia, you think I was a fucking crazy person, and I can't edit it, my own page. They won't let me, and they won't even let me put, they have false information up at Wikipedia, and they won't let the good things be put up there, like all the quotes that people say about me on their shows that are nice, and all the things that Chris Hedges has said about me in print. They won't let any of the good stuff in on my Wikipedia page, but only the fake stuff. Like they say Jimmy Dore was a conspiracy theorist who said that what's called a conspiracy theorist by CNN Business, because he said the Syrian gas attacks were false. They were. And right. I was right about that. Of course, they're still going with the lie. It's like if I debunked WMDs and they would print in Wikipedia, Jimmy Dore was a conspiracy theorist who didn't believe in WMD. I mean, it's just like, I was right, I'm right. And so, but there's no recourse. I wish.
So next one, it's a little long, so stick with me as I stumble over this. Can you tell us about the evolution of how your opinion changed regarding the COVID situation? There was great comedy about Herman Cain, Jimmy expressing fear of the virus and wanting to get vaccinated, and now a strong criticism of the COVID response as government overreach and as discriminatory. No criticism from me here. This is fine evolution, but personally, I was so relieved to hear this change in opinion expressed from Jimmy and others like Max. What was the evolution of this thinking?
I knew I had to get it, right? The vaccine. Because my doctor had recommended it, and I have an underlying condition, and I don't my flex is to be skeptical, but I was just like, so I didn't really look into it. I didn't want, because I knew I was going to get it, so I didn't want to know anything that was going to scare the shit out of me. Does that make sense? So yep. I did, and I don't know if I really talked about it much. I don't know if I talked about it much on my show. We did do sketches with Herman Cain because he died of COVID and he was unvaxxed, and Mike McRae does a hilarious impression, so it was I don't want to die. It was funny. And he would call back from the dead. It was the first guy we had do that, I think. And so then I got the vax, and I got injured from the vax. I never got better. You know how you have side effects? Right. I never got better. 5 weeks out, I was getting worse and worse every day. And I got lucky because a doctor, Dr. Uganda, who is leading a team of doctors in studying people like me, found out about me and entered me into his study. So, the CDC recommends. So anyway, I was involved in one of those studies. I'm a data point, and he has a protocol for drugs that would help you. I took them and they helped me. And so I still have problems today, but luckily I didn't get heart inflammation. Luckily I didn't get that. A lot of people are getting that. And so that made me be as skeptical as I should have been. And I started looking into it, and I had Dr. Robert Malone on my show, who's the inventor of the mRNA vaccine technology. And he laid it out for me. He explained to me what a leaky vaccine is. He explained to me how you're supposed to vaccinate people during a pandemic, which is not the way they're doing it. He laid it out, and so this guy did, and he, of course, is an anti-vax. The guy's been working on vaccines his entire fucking life, right. And he's working on a vaccine for COVID right now. So he's not anti-vax. So he just so and he didn't, again, he wasn't going to get anything out of saying, he's not going to get a contract with big pharma for fucking saying this stuff. He was actually sticking his neck out to go against convention, and he was going to take a hit to his reputation, which he knew. And so I'm more inclined to believe that guy than Dr. Fauci. So, and everything he said checks out. All the science that he said 100% checks out. And so I saw this. So, and then I saw how they lied about ivermectin. Like I've never seen anything like that. The propaganda against ivermectin, right?
I mean, the horse dewormer?
Yeah, to make you think you're taking a horse dewormer. The people who are taking it are crazy horse dewormer. And those people never knew anything. But first of all, the CDC recommends, they even have a recommended dose of ivermectin to treat COVID in a study. They go, if you're going to, we recommend more. The CDC says we can't recommend for ivermectin for COVID or against it. They say we recommend more trials be done using it. I was in one of those trials. So, so to see the establishment media make everyone seem like a crazy well, that's because big pharma funds establishment media, and so that's exactly what they did. They made everybody who talked about ivermectin seem like a crazy person who was and now even though people, the shit libs now say, well, I know it's a human medicine, but it's for parasites, not for there are so many uses for it. They have no idea. It's considered a wonder drug. Before COVID, they were looking at ivermectin to treat fucking cancer. They have so many uses for this drug, right? And so again, that's just more propaganda that people are being fed by the establishment media funded by big pharma. That, oh, it's a parasite drug. It's not approved. It's like, what? By the way, why do you give a fuck? It's like if I said it has less side effects than aspirin. Would you get pissed off if I recommended taking aspirin?
Right.
Why do people have an emotional investment in what medicine someone else takes?
Well, Matt Taibbi wrote a great article on a new drug that hadn't even been released yet. And before it was released, it was getting demonized as prolonging the pandemic. So it just seems like anything that, is not the vaccine, the approved big pharma COVID vaccines, those are evil, and even the like the Chinese and the Russian vaccines, right? Like those are demonized by the corporate media.
Yeah. And if they really thought that you could vaccinate your way out of this, why wouldn't they be giving the vaccines to poor countries? And they're not, right? And why would Bill Gates tell Oxford University not to give away their vaccine for free? Why would he do that? I thought this is about health and getting rid of the virus. Well, they know that you can't vaccinate your way out of this pandemic. And so, but they don't want to tell you that. Just like Dr. Robert Malone said to everybody on my show, which, by the way, is still up on YouTube. It's not fucking taken down. I didn't get taken down for fucking medical misinformation. It's been up since a couple months now. So, and by the way, and all the people calling me anti-vax, go to which one of my videos? Nobody can show anywhere where I'm saying anything.
Because you're generally skeptical.
Because I'm giving honest, accurate criticisms of the schizophrenic policy that's not based on science around COVID. Mandating vaccines is not based on science, and firing healthcare workers in the middle of a pandemic is not based on science. As I pointed out in New York, they were firing 72,000 medical workers, and they were going to replace some of them with unvaccinated National Guard workers, because the National Guard doesn't have to be vaccinated until the end of June 2022. And so that's not about health.
Well, Jimmy, I do have one final patron question. This is another one asking you to have guests on. Hi, Jimmy. I was wondering if you can interview Judy Mikovits, Cynthia McKinney, and or Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on the COVID jab mandates, masks, lockdowns, young animal experimentation, and talking about the Great Reset by Bill Gates, Fauci, and Klaus Schwab.
Hey, look, I don't have fucking crazies on my show, right? I love it. Yeah, what I say about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., because people want to censor him, because again, I say, if you don't like what he's saying, rebut him. When has censorship ever fixed anything? It only makes problems worse. It doesn't fix anything. So if you don't like what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is saying, rebut him. I would love to bring him on my show and find out what he's all about. I don't really even know what he's all about. So I would love to bring him on and find out. But if I did that, people would say, Jimmy Dore's he's platforming. Really, I can't interview Kennedy. You don't want to know what he's about? You don't want to know what his message is? And if it's wrong, we can rebut it and debunk it. Why are they afraid of ideas? But they are. Just when I brought on a Boogaloo boy who was pro Black Lives Matter, pro LGBTQ, anti-Trump, anti-war, anti-cop. I brought that guy on my show. Oh my God. That's what scares the hell out of the establishment the most, is when you reach out to people across the aisle and find common ground. That's what they can't have. So they have to stop that immediately. And I got the propaganda that came out. So that's the biggest thing. But thanks for having me on. I know you got to run.
Well, no, Jimmy, I do agree. I have to say, one of the strange things about the feedback about my Chomsky interview was a lot of people like associating you with it for some reason, like, saying this is all Jimmy Dore's fault that Chomsky looks bad in this video. It really is strange how, like, and you are living in their head rent free, and you're public enemy number one to these neolibs.
Well, much like Joe Rogan, it screws their head up that they can't cancel me because I'm not looking for a job. They can't shame me out of existence because I have a loyal audience that follows me and wherever I go. And you know who shows up in my audience? A cross-section of America. I have wide appeal. And they try to make that into something bad. Oh my God, people, libertarians like Jimmy, not only progressives, not only lefties, not only environmentalists like Jimmy, but people on the libertarian right like Jimmy too. That's bad, right? No, that's not bad. That's good. Oh no, Trumpers like Jimmy, that's bad, right? No, because then they get to hear the message on Medicare for all. And all the, I can't tell you how many Trumpers I've met that say I've turned them on Medicare for all. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
Right. Well, what's funny is that they're allowed to reach across the aisle when, it's pro-establishment grifters, when it's pro-war folks, when it's folks who support U.S. imperialism. If you reach across the aisle then and, have these sort of dialogues, that's perfectly fine. But when it's anti-war folks, anti-imperialist, anti-establishment folks, that's the bad, evil, horseshoe theory, Nazbol, evil vortex happening.
And you're not going to get Medicare for all to pass until you get everybody together. You can't just have a bunch of lefties out there protesting. You have to get back. You're not going to get the wars to end and the military budget until you get everybody together. So the people are being used to divide, to turn on their enemy, to turn on their neighbor. Your neighbor is not your enemy. Your enemy is the oligarchy, and you got to keep your eye on that. Trump voters are not my enemy. Right-wingers are not my enemy. They are victims of this fucking system, just like left-wingers are, just like environmentalists are. We are all victims of this capitalist system. 80% of workers living paycheck to paycheck, 50% of all wage earners earning $30,000 or less. You see what's happening, all the misery caused by COVID. That is equally distributed. So we have to keep our eye on the prize. We need to come together on the things we agree on. I'll join anybody who's for Medicare for all. I'll join anyone who's for ending the wars and military budget. I'll join with anybody who's for ending student debt. I'll vote for anyone who's against fracking. I'll work with anybody on any of those policies, and you'd be stupid not to, because that's how politics works. And that's when things really get done, and that's what scares the shit out of them.
Well, Jimmy, I really do appreciate you being back on the show. I think this is your 4th appearance. So again, I appreciate you coming back on repeatedly and supporting this show. Everybody out there already follows you. Do you have any big shows coming up or any big guests or any other projects in the works?
I'm going to be in Tempe, Arizona, November 11th. I'll be in Baltimore, November 6th. And I'm going to be in Portland Thanksgiving weekend, that Friday and Saturday at Helium Comedy Club. So if you're in those places, come see me. I'm really fucking bringing the heat now with my new act. I'm really excited about it. I am. I have a lot of stuff. I have my response to Dave Chappelle in my act, and I have a lot of things that are happening in my act that are everyone leaves happy. So I love being back out there, meeting people, doing stand-up comedy, not being afraid of COVID. We're all going to get it. We're all going to get it. You cannot insulate yourself from getting COVID. You're going to get it eventually, and it isn't going away.
Well, Jimmy, again, I really do appreciate you being on the show again. I appreciate you going over all of these topics, and hopefully I can have you back at some point in the future.
Okay, thank you, buddy. Take care.
Thank you.